What is the role of social media in card prices? Does content creation actually have an influence on the sports card market? Let's explore this idea. When I first started thinking about this video topic, my mind kind of split in several different directions. Because on the one hand, I do think that when there is hype that happens, it increases people's attention. People focus on where the hype is. And social media can play a role in where this hype goes. I think some other, maybe ESPN unknowingly plays more role on the hype in the sports card market than Jeff Wilson would with the Sports Card Nonsense podcast or whatever, or some of these places that get a little bit more, more viewers. But I think the hype comes more from the larger mainstream media cycles, like the ESPNs and stuff like that, where they're bringing up certain players, they're talking about certain players. It becomes part of the discourse in the sport because of where mainstream media is kind of focusing its attention. Social media is part of the thing that maintains that conversation. So if it's sparked off because ESPN or whatever is talking about something a lot, maybe it's social media that maintains it to a certain degree. So I could see, okay, so maybe social media and YouTube channels and stuff do have an influence on the sports card market. But then I started looking a little bit closer at the viewership of like these YouTube channels, and it made me realize that actually I think people overestimate how social media can influence sports card values. Because besides the Sports Card Investor channel, which has a pretty large viewership, there's a very few sports card content channels that actually have that much viewership. In the sports card world, we look at a channel with 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, and that's a big channel. A channel that's 30,000 subscribers is massive. That's going to be one of the top 10 biggest sports card channels, basically, not including just ones that are just there for breaks. There are some channels that just exist for breaks, and they have a lot of people who are coming in for that. But I'm thinking about other content, people who are talking about the hobby, people who are talking about the sports and how it's affecting the hobby, people who are this kind of space, or even people who are making vlogs about what they're buying and selling. That particular category maybe has a bit more viewership, but the space where people are actually like talking about specific players and how they're doing and how that might be affecting their card market, like besides the Sports Card Investor channel, there's not a lot of channels that get that much viewership around that kind of content. That group of like YouTube channels who talks about the sports card market, I don't think they have that much influence on the sports card market in general. I think that when you're in this space of watching a lot of YouTube channels about sports cards, you feel that other people are getting this same content, but then you forget that actually, there's not a lot of people who are in this space that frequently, especially when you consider the fact of how the YouTube algorithm works. I was thinking about this. The idea for this video actually came up because I was realizing that over the past several months, I have not watched any sports card content on YouTube when I used to watch it pretty frequently. And I was like, why haven't I been? I enjoy it sometimes, but I haven't been because the algorithm stopped feeding it to me, because there was a period of time where I had watched too much of it and I was getting a little bored with it, and there wasn't a lot of new stuff being talked about in the sports card content world. So I was just like, okay, I'm not going to really pay much attention to it. And then it completely disappeared from my algorithm feed. And then a bunch of other stuff, would pop up whenever I would open YouTube, and I was watching videos about all these other things. But sports cards were never on there. And then I was like, wow, I haven't watched I realized, I was like, gosh, has this sports card YouTube channel, say Sports Card Dad or Dan the Card Man, or whoever it was, have they even been making content? I don't know. I haven't heard anything about them in like half a year, or maybe not quite half a year, but like 3 months or something at least. So I was like, I'm going to go back over there and see, oh no, they've been posting very regularly. It's just because I haven't been watching sports card content. They haven't been popping up in my algorithm, so I haven't been watching them, and it's been fine. So I think that happens for a lot of people. I think, even people who are really into sports cards, they're not necessarily consistently into sports card content. And because of that, I think the algorithm ends up fading away. So I think that means that these YouTube channels don't have that much influence on the market. I don't think that if somebody wanted to run a pump and dump scheme by starting a YouTube channel and building up an audience and have a pump and dump scheme, it wouldn't be successful. There's not enough influence in these spaces. ESPN, just talking about some upcoming prospect probably has bigger influence than any single social media platform could have. So this is part of the reason why I think we overblow it. And maybe there was a period of time when we were collectively as a hobby becoming a little bit more aware of the need to spread education rather than spread hype. And so there was a period of time when there was a lot of finger pointed at people who would say things like, oh, I think this player's cards are going to go up, I think this player's cards are going to go down, because it was kind of feeding into these hype cycles, which people thought was kind of disingenuous, or it was manipulating the market in some way or something like this, giving financial advice almost in situations where people didn't have the expertise to do that. But I do think that we might have gone a little bit overboard on the finger pointing in those spaces, because I think it's made people afraid to share their opinions about certain things like that, because they're afraid that it's going to be perceived as kind of feeding into these hype cycles. But I don't think those actually affect things that much. So I personally think, like, if you think there's like this card, this brand, this player, this set is gonna have some sort of spike or whatever, share that. I think it's fine to share these things. I mean, I think it's good that we're sharing not just the opinion, but kind of the knowledge and the reasoning underneath things, because ultimately, I do think that we have a duty in sports card content world to also create an environment of knowledge, create an environment of education. Not that I have knowledge that someone else doesn't have, but to create the conversations and to be part of the conversations and to contribute to the conversations. I think that's part of the role of content creators like this. So like myself, that's part of my role, I believe. So but that doesn't mean, like, if I think some player is probably going to go up in value, like I could say I have a feeling Luka Doncic cards right now, they're there's a building hype, I think, again around him. I have a feeling that because he's probably going to be first or second for MVP this year, his team, I have a feeling, could be doing good. I have a feeling his cards will probably see a little spike. There's an opinion. I'm not trying to hype it up. I'm just giving reasoning behind something and then sharing a thought that I have. Could I be wrong? 100%. It's very likely. I'm wrong as often as I'm right. But I think in the sports card content world, it's nice to be able to just share some of these ideas here and there and not be worried about it, about how it might affect the market in general. Yeah, so I think part of that is, maybe culturally people are quick to judge and point fingers at this stage in U.S. cultural reality. I mean, you can see the entire political discourse is around this exact idea. It's very garbagey. The garbage man's outside, so it's a good timing for that when talking about the U.S. political system. And the garbage man drives by, a very appropriate metaphor there. So anyway, yeah. So I think it's fine. Like I don't necessarily have strong opinions of which players' cards are going to go up or down, so I don't talk about it that much. But I actually like it when other people share their ideas about those things. It just gets me thinking. I pay attention to the sport, and I like to think about like how somebody's play might be affecting the psychology of the sports card market. I say the psychology of the sports card market because it's not necessarily always about how that player plays, but how that player's play affects the mindset of someone, and how the mindset affects how they engage in the sports card market. And I actually quite enjoy hearing people's opinions about those things. And I don't get influenced to buy or sell by those opinions, but I like to hear them anyway, just because it's part of the conversation in the sports card space. And I enjoy those at any type of conversation in these sports card spaces, whether it's about market values, whether it's about collectability, whether it's about certain cards, whatever it might be. I enjoy a number of these different topics. And I feel like we've gotten a little bit too careful about some of this stuff in the content space. The other thing is, I do feel like because of the way that the algorithm works, sometimes it gets a little boring, the sports card content world, because people are rehashing the same things over and over again. They're trying to invent conversations when there's not really one that needs to take place at this time. And I think that also actually has a negative effect on sports card content in general. I think it creates an environment where people think that it's getting boring, where it thinks there's nothing to be said, and then people kind of drift away from it. And like I said before, when that happened to me and I started to drift away from watching videos because the algorithm doesn't feed them to me, I start missing them entirely, and then I have to go out of my way to be like, oh, I need to go back and see what's been going on in this world and see what conversations are happening. There could have been some amazing, interesting conversations happening in that span of time. I wouldn't know because I missed it entirely, and I'm not going to go back and watch hundreds of channels. So this is why I kind of wish that people would create their YouTube channel without worrying so much about the algorithm, and would think of what is the content that is actually useful, and what is a conversation that furthers understanding, or that furthers the conversation a step, or are we just rehashing the same conversation over and over again? I mean, there's certain parts of conversations that can be rehashed over again as we gain understanding, and as we're able to express our understanding more clearly and able to, kind of consolidate what others have said. I know there's value to having some conversations for sure. And I'm sure I've done that on this channel plenty. Even this video right here, I've probably made a video of somewhat similar content and somewhat similar ideas in the past. But I feel like, you know, I'm at a point where even if I have, I don't remember what I said, and it's at a point where I feel like I've gained additional understanding, or I've heard more perspectives, and so that I can create, you know, a video that I feel is thoughtful and interesting for some of us. If you're still here, then it must be interesting to you. Otherwise, why are you watching all of this? If you're not enjoying it, go away. Just kidding. You can stay here. Put it on mute if you want. Just keep watching, and I think that helps the algorithm too. Just put all my channels on. Just put it on mute and just go through my entire playlist of things. That would help me actually. Go ahead. So anyway, this is just some random thoughts, some sports card philosophizing for the day. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.